little stronger than that. الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين وعلى آله وأصحابه أجمعين. Alhamdulillah, here at Beitum An-Nasr in Pleasantville, New Jersey, to talk a little bit about the newly revised book called He Came to Perfect Moral Character. Inshallah ta'ala, I'm going to select one chapter and just kind of read from it a little bit just to give everyone an idea what was going on in my head when I wrote it. Let me see, you got something stronger over there than this? Because I usually hit the table with my hand when I'm talking. I don't want to knock the camera over.
You want to use a couple books?
Yeah, a couple books would be good.
Use a book. Think this should be strong enough?
Yeah, that should be strong enough. That should do it.
Are you hot? Wait a minute. Are you hot?
I'm always hot.
All right, so
I'm hot-blooded. That's part of my nature.
It's hot in here, right? Man, cut that thing down. Right? I did. Yeah, well, we having a problem with your... We have
No, that's cool. That's cool.
Oh, we're record.
Yeah, that's good.
It's off. It's off.
That's good. Just open a window. Just open a window. Because if it's hot in here now, it's going to get even more hot. There you go. Okay. So the title of the book is called He Came to Perfect Moral Character. Revise the persona of Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam through my eyes. And I know someone can say, well, who are you to define the persona of Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam? As I mentioned in the beginning of the book, most people, I'm a convert to Islam. So when most people convert to Islam, you have people, Muslims, who are more seasoned, who've been Muslim longer, trying to paint a picture for you of who Prophet Muhammad is, right? Oh, this is the Sunnah. The Prophet didn't do that. He would do this. Or the Prophet used to do that. And so you have all of these mixed, visions of what the actual character of the Prophet is, right? Or was. Sometimes people paint him to the extreme of being this rigid person that had no compassion or mercy. And then you have some who paint him on the other end to be this, this very, easygoing, would let everybody kind of get away with murder type of personality when, in fact, his character was kind of middle course between those two extremes. And I had to figure that out on my own. No one can tell you who Prophet Muhammad is, for you to have a complete understanding of his persona, except that you go through the process and learn it on your own. So once I, graduated from the university and, begin to implement what I believe was the Sunnah, what little bit I knew from Islam in the world that I was in, I started to kind of have firsthand experience of what his character was really like. And then I came to the realization that most of the stuff that people were trying to, give me to help me, have this image of Prophet Muhammad in my eyes, they were like throwing darts, kind of missing the target, right? The target is in the middle and you're throwing darts, and it's like the darts are hitting all around the actual target, but never actually hitting the target itself, right? And nobody can hit your target better than you. You understand? Nobody can hit your target, right? Nobody can hit your target but you, all right? Meaning the exact depiction that I had of Prophet Muhammad in my eyes, based upon what I read and what I studied, I didn't find anybody actually hitting that on the head. From where I stand, I grew up in East Orange, New Jersey. You understand? Like I'm from a different walk of life. So when you are trying to make Prophet Muhammad's character real to someone that comes from that type of environment, it has to, you know what I mean? Like it has to appeal to them. To someone who grew up in suburban America, you know, silver spoon in their mouth, never, their understanding of Prophet Muhammad is going to be completely different. How he's going to appeal to them and resonate with them is different than how he's going to appeal to me and resonate with me. You guys follow me? So, you know, it's important that, you know, where we come from, where you come from whatever walk of life you come from, that helps to shape and mold your perception of life. Right? So when you go and you sit in a lecture and someone's, you know, painting a picture of Prophet Muhammad, I mean figuratively, not literally, like figuratively through lectures and things like that, painting a picture for you of Prophet Muhammad, to some people it just kind of goes right over their head and it's just like that doesn't resonate with me. Like you painting a picture of Prophet Muhammad like he walked on water, and like from where I come from, like, you know what I mean, like in the church they did that with Jesus. That's not going to work with me. You can't hand me an image of Prophet Muhammad of him like walking on water and I'm supposed to say, wow, and just gravitate towards that. It has to be real for me. And this is why, you know, it's important for, you know, these huge Islamic organizations, you know, that conduct these 3-day lectures, for them to diversify their speakers, because the speakers are going to appeal to the people in the different walks of life that they come from. You understand? If I go to a conference, a 3-day conference, 3-day lecture, and I come from the slums of America, and you got, Indo-Pak or an Arab speaker up there, he's speaking from his own paradigm. And although I can understand what the person is saying, the depths of what they're saying is not resonating with me, because it doesn't appeal to me and where I come from. You understand? So it's important that, organizations are, this is why the Prophet ﷺ, he hand-selected individuals to go to specific places to speak to specific people, because he knew that this person would be more effective speaking to those people than this person would be. You understand? And this is why Quraysh, when they were signing the peace treaty with Prophet Muhammad ﷺ, they sent different individuals. Like one guy, said, let me go talk to Muhammad. All right, and he went, and when the Prophet saw him coming, the Prophet said, he's a fasik, min nasi, min ikhwani. He's a fasik, he's a criminal of the person like this that's coming to talk to me is a criminal. Meaning the Prophet what he was going to say to the Prophet wasn't going to resonate with him, because in their society, the Prophet saw him as a criminal amongst his people. What can you possibly say to me that's going to, change my view? So then they sent a man, Suhail ibn Amr. And when the Prophet saw Suhail ibn Amr coming towards him, he said, Kassahalallahu lakum amrakum, that Allah has made your affair easy. Because Suhail, I know him. And he's one of those easygoing guys, and I know we're going to end up reaching an agreement. You understand what I'm saying? He knew. So it's important that, when we're speaking to people, that we speak to people in their language. You know what I'm saying? And I just think that, Islamic organizations have done, a huge injustice to the American Muslim populace as a whole by not diversifying their speakers. And I've said this on multiple occasions, and I'm going to continue to say it until it happens. And eventually I believe that it has to happen. And I think that it would be more effective if they did that. So when I say the persona of Prophet Muhammad through my eyes, I'm saying from a young African American raised in the ghetto, raised in the hood, who came from nothing and found his way to Islam by the permission of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and eventually found his way to have a, understanding of who Prophet Muhammad is from his own paradigm. So when I say the persona of Prophet Muhammad through my eyes, that's what I'm saying. How I arrived at who Prophet Muhammad is from where I'm standing. Now, if you look in the book and you see something in there that is inaccurate, then please point it out to me, because the book is completely laced with Quran and Sunnah. You know what I mean? And it's all just from my perspective, So that's the title of the book. The chapter I'm going to choose, which is one of my favorite chapters, It's chapter number 6, being down to earth. This was probably one of the working on this particular chapter probably resonated with me the most, especially being in the position of being an Islamic speaker, preacher, teacher. You find that I remember when I first became Muslim, and there was a group of imams that were very popular during that time, and they were almost like superstars. And and there was only like maybe a few that I could say from where I'm standing that were very down to earth, that when you talk to them, like you didn't feel like you were talking to this great Islamic preacher or teacher. They were very down to earth, and Abu Osama was one of them. And even now to this day, he's very down to earth. When you talk to Abu Osama, it's like you're talking to any regular street dude from the hood. Sometimes he pour on a little too thick, but for the most part, man, like you can kind of let your guard down when you're talking to him. Like you don't feel like you gotta say the right words, choose the right words. You know how you talking to certain people. I remember when I was a new Muslim and I used to go to a particular imam, I used to like formulate my question in my head before I went to him, because he's just very rigid. You know what I'm saying? And then when you come to him, you gotta come correct. You know what I mean? Or he's gonna embarrass you. You're gonna walk away feeling like like very small. And one of the things about Abu Osama, may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala preserve him, he never made me feel like that. Never made me feel like that, man. Even in times of my own ignorance, when I, was a new convert and, I was, of a particular, a masjid and of a particular cult, because that's what it was, persuasion, right? And Abu Osama was like on the opposite of that, and and I kind of saw him in Philly one time, and I was kind of shadid with him, and he just kind of looked at me and was like, man, young boy, man, you gotta go somewhere and sit down, man. But he didn't handle me, like he didn't meet me with that same negative energy. And later on, and going through my own trials, I respected that. You know what I'm saying? I respected that, because at some point that young person who was filled with rage and not, because most of it you don't really understand, you can't really put it where it belongs. Eventually they come into the realization, and it makes it easy for them to come back and apologize. You know what I mean? But when you deal with someone harshly and you embarrass them for how they approach you, you make it very difficult for them later on to come back and say, hey, my apologies, years ago I ran into you. Even when I reminded him of the situation, he was like, I don't even remember what you're talking about. I was like, yeah, one time we was in Philly and we came to your house and I kind of said something to you out of the way. And he was like, I don't even remember the situation. But nonetheless, I accept your apology. It made it very easy, So the title of this chapter, number 6, is called Being Down to Earth, page 118. So I'm going to read a little bit from that chapter. So for those of you who have the book, for those of you who purchased, the book online, you should have gotten your books today. Alhamdulillah, a sister reached out and said she got her book today, and she was very happy with that. So for those of you who ordered the book online, you should have gotten your book today. The books were shipped out on Tuesday. So if you have your book with you now, you can kind of just follow along, inshallah. All right, so let me start off with the beginning of the chapter on page 118. It says, the term down to earth is often used by many, but understood and exemplified by few. It is opposite the holier than thou attitude. So when we say down to earth, it is the total opposite of holier than thou. All right, so the opposite, the antithesis to being down to earth is holier than thou. All right, so it is opposite the holier than thou attitude commonly adopted by people in positions of leadership and those of a higher religious authority, i.e. imams, preachers, teachers, right? The literal meaning of being down to earth is to be practical, unpretentious, and simple in style. That's what it means. There's no pretension, like you're not angling, for something. There's no pretension involved. Right, very simple in your style, very simple in your way of communicating with people, very simple in the way that you can relate to people and other people relate to you. There's no over the top, right? When the Prophet ﷺ was sitting in a crowd of people, if you didn't know what he looked like prior to going into that crowd, you wouldn't know which one was him. Very simple in style, very easygoing, very, and practical. Practical. When you look at the Prophet's approach to people and dealing with people, very practical. He didn't give you like some weird, whacked out theoretical way of approaching life. It was very simple, very, unpretentious and practical. So that is basically the definition of meaning of being down to earth. Anybody here can identify with being down to earth? Do you see yourself as being unpretentious? Like you're not angling. You have some people who everything is an angle with them. They angling 24/7. Everything is, to get to some place. It's like, where you going with this conversation? Like, just spell it out for me. You ain't got to stop me and say, hey, I listened to your lecture. That was deep. Like, no, just tell me, like, what do you want? Like, don't take me halfway around the world. You ain't got to do that with me. I'm very simple. I pretty much give you what you want, right? You want validation, I'll give you that. You ain't got to stroke me for that, right? So, practical, unpretentious, simple in style. That's what it means to be down to earth. And I can't think of a person who was that fits that description more than Prophet Muhammad, sallallahu alaihi wasallam. The moral fiber of Prophet Muhammad's character epitomized this philosophy. Unlike many today who hold themselves to high moral standards, whether in Islam or those who adhere to other faith traditions. Regardless of the religious affiliation, you will find that many miss the mark when it comes to adopting this moral code and incorporating it into their lives holistically. Islam is a religion that encourages its adherents to adapt a middle course in everything. So here is our Islamic definition of being down to earth, is always finding that middle ground. That's what it means to be down. If we had to simplify it from an Islamic perspective, being down to earth would mean always taking the middle ground. Aisha said that the Prophet ﷺ was never given a choice between two matters except that he chose the easiest of the two. So as long as there was no sin involved. Very simple in style. Very simple. All right, and then we have to look at ourselves and ask ourselves, do I always go for the most difficult? Because sometimes we're looking for self-validation. We think to be more difficult means that I'm better, right? To take the more difficult route would mean that I'm really rigid on my religion. And the Prophet ﷺ was the total opposite. He was never given a choice between two matters, except that he chose the easiest of the two. So as long as there was no sin involved. All right? So as most aspects of life have two extremes. Most aspects of life have two extremes. One of complete negligence and the other of exaggeration and excessiveness. So in life, you have two extremes. You have the extreme of neglect, of not doing anything, and then you have the other extreme of excessiveness, doing too much, right? As we say today, you're doing the most, right? You're doing the most, right? You just go so hard unnecessarily, right? And I wish somebody had explained this to me when I first became Muslim, because I thought like pouring it on thick religiously made me feel like I was more religious. But in the end, you end up chasing people away from you. You make people not want to be around you because like you're doing the most.
Exactly.
You're doing the most and you make people uncomfortable around you. All right, leaders in many capacities, educational, spiritual, parental, etc., have struggled to maintain a balance between these two extremes for a plethora of reasons. Contrary to popular belief, Muslims are not angelic beings who do no wrong. And this is for all of our non-Muslim listeners. Muslims are not perfect. We're human. We make mistakes like everybody else, right? We're not beyond. We're not infallible. We make mistakes. In fact, many Muslims struggle to find a balance between what Allah expects from them, and what their individual capacities will allow. Is there any Muslim in here that doesn't struggle with that? Trying to find a balance between what God wants from you and what you have the ability to offer at that moment. And this could be in the moment. It doesn't necessarily have to be, doesn't have to define you holistically, but in each and every individual moment. Even the Prophet ﷺ said that لِكُلِّ فَتْرَ شِرَّةً لِكُلِّ شِرَّ فَتْرَةً لِكُلِّ عَمَلٍ شِرَّةً وَلِكُلِّ شِرَّ فَتْرَةً. That every action has its period of enthusiasm. Sometimes you're enthusiastic about salah, and sometimes you're not. Sometimes you're enthusiastic about fasting. You're looking forward to it. Tomorrow, Monday, I'm going to fast tomorrow. I'm getting it in. And then sometimes like, man, I'm not fasting tomorrow, man. Like next week, inshallah. You keep putting it off. And I mean, like every deed has its period of enthusiasm. All right. So we're not going to maintain, one, pattern of enthusiasm all the time. That's just part of being a believer. It fluctuates. Sometimes you feel like you're on top of your deen, and sometimes you feel like a complete hypocrite. That's just normal. That's normal. All right. So believe it or not, in fact, many Muslims struggle to find a balance between what Allah expects from them and what their individual capacities will allow. In a contemporary context, the term good Muslim is a relative one and should not be interpreted as one who is without sin. When we say, oh, he's a good Muslim, what does that mean? That's relative. What do I mean when I say that's relative? Meaning relative to the person who said it. Only that person can define what he means by a good Muslim. Everybody has their own interpretation about what being a good Muslim is. But no one person can give you a definition of what a good Muslim is. If I was to ask everybody in this room what a good Muslim is, you would probably give me 10, 15 different explanations. Some of them may overlap and, intersect, but for the most part, the definition itself is going to be different because it's relative to how you see a good Muslim. And I hate when we use terms in Islam to define all Muslims. Oh, he's a good Muslim. A Muslim who prays 5 times a day. Would you say he's a good Muslim? He's a good Muslim. But let's say a person prays 5 times a day, but he prays all 5 prayers at the end of the day. Is he a good Muslim? Right, exactly. Right. All right, and let's take it a step even further. So if I said a Muslim who prays 5 times a day is a good Muslim. Okay. He doesn't pray the prayers on time. He waits until he gets home at the end of the day and lumps all 5 salat together and then prays all his 5 at one time. You would say, that's not a good Muslim. I say, okay, let's compare him to somebody who doesn't pray at all. Does he look like a good Muslim? Absolutely. You see how that works? No matter what scenario I give you, it's always going to look different when you compare it juxtaposed to somebody else's, scenario. You understand? That's what I mean when I say it's a relevant is a relative term, meaning that's your definition of what a good Muslim is. But somebody, I remember one time, sad man, but it's like our jealousy and envy goes so deep, man. I remember like years ago, it was like maybe 15 years ago, I was interested in a sister. And a particular Salafi brother, he came to the sister's wali and was like, oh, he's not a good Muslim. So the imam was like, well, the wali doesn't want to marry the sister to you because the brother said you're not a good Muslim. And I just walk away and I'm saying to myself, well, what in the world does that even mean? I'm not a good Muslim? I mean, like, what does that mean? Compared to who? Compared to what am I not a good Muslim? I'm just really trying to figure that out. So we have to, we really have to check ourselves when we start using terms like that, man. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's very dangerous, man. Wow. So, I could say a Muslim who prays 5 times a day is a good Muslim. But then if I give you a different scenario, say the Muslim who prays 5 times a day, lump all his 5 salats together and prays them at night when he get home. It doesn't look so good as a good Muslim. But then when I compare him to somebody who doesn't pray at all, then he looks like a good Muslim. But, each and every different scenario is going to be different, man. All right. So in a contemporary context, the term good Muslim is a relative one and should not be interpreted as someone who doesn't commit sin. We might say that someone is a good Muslim simply because he doesn't commit sin. That's not what makes you a good Muslim. I'm talking about somebody who's a non-Muslim. Because a non-Muslim might look inside at a Muslim and say, oh, he's a good Muslim. I've never seen him do anything wrong. Like, that doesn't make you a good Muslim because you don't commit sin. And there's nobody that is without sin. How could you say he doesn't, he's not a sinner, he doesn't commit sin? That's, As people who believe that they are of this particular ilk are not necessarily in need of God or Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, neither is Allah in need of them. The Prophet ﷺ explained why people who adopt this mentality are a detriment to themselves and to their relationship with Allah. What am I talking about? I'm talking about people who think that they don't sin. All right, and people who, even further than that, believe that they are a good Muslim because they don't sin. The Prophet ﷺ said, I swear by the one in whose hands my soul is in. That's just another way of him saying, I swear by Allah, right? Because Allah is the one in whose hands our soul is in. So that's just another way of him saying, I swear by Allah, just to kind of add emphasis on it. He said, I swear by the one in whose hands my soul is in. If you did not commit sin, Allah would remove you and replace you with a people who would commit sin and ask Allah for his forgiveness, and he would forgive them. This is collected in Sahih Muslim. All right. And one of the things that you'll notice about the book, in contrast to the first book, is that I took the Arabic out. All right. I took the Arabic out. And the reason why I took the Arabic out, number one, it makes the book bigger. All right. And I'm not doing this for money. Some people add extra things to the book to make it bigger so they can charge more money for it. For me, it's not about the money. It's about the material. And number two, most of the people that's reading the book don't even read Arabic. So what are we putting the Arabic in there for? And number three, sometimes the book end up in places where it shouldn't, and then it has Arabic from ayats from the Quran in it. It's different if it's English translation. That's not the word of Allah. That's in translation, English translation of Allah's words. It's not Allah's words. But when you put Arabic in it, and then the book goes in the bathroom, the book is on the floor. You understand what I'm saying? Like it's very important for us to, be careful of that. All right. People usually associate being a good Muslim or a practicing Muslim with instantaneous obedience to every injunction in the religion. That was my dilemma when I first became Muslim. I thought that in order for me to be categorized as a good Muslim, I had to obey Allah immediately. When somebody brought me a hadith or ayat, I had to immediately implement it. And, when you do that, you're not giving you're giving yourself a chance to live with the ayat, live with the hadith, and begin to incorporate it into your life. That's the step that we missed with the whole Salafi da'wah thing. We missed that step. It was like, this is what the sheikh said. It's like, but can you give me some time to understand it and then incorporate it in my life? Or I got to do that right now. It's like, no, this is what the sheikh said. You gotta adhere to that instantaneously, immediately, without any understanding, without any depth to it, nothing. Just follow and obey, right? And that's what we interpreted as a new Muslim. If someone brought you an ayat or a hadith and then tomorrow saw that you weren't implementing it, it's just like, but I gave you the hadith yesterday. I don't see you practicing it. It's like Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala didn't reveal the whole Quran in one night. You understand what I'm saying? Like there was a process to that for a reason, So this is totally unrealistic given the fact that change is a process, not an abrupt event. Not to mention that human beings are creatures of habit. All right? We create habits with things as human beings, and that's how things resonate with us. The religion of Islam was revealed intermittently over a period of 23 years. This provided the early converts with space to conform at their own pace without judgment. Very important. You understand? Islam, the whole religion, was revealed in a period of 23 years to give the early converts, we're talking about the Prophet's community. So if Allah gave the Prophet's communities time and space to begin to live with the religion at their own pace without judgment, how much more with us? We're 1,439 years away from the Hijrah. We're not in part of the Prophet's community. We're not even close to anybody who's 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 close to the Sahaba. I mean, just think about the logic in that. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave the religion to the Prophet intermittently over a period of 23 years to give the Sahaba an opportunity to conform to the religion without judgment. There was no judgment. The Sahaba said that we used to go perform Hajj. We're going to perform Hajj. we were traveling, and some of us would be fasting, and some of us wouldn't be fasting, and nobody would find fault with the other. You understand? No judgment. Why? Because the Prophet said that there's nothing righteous about fasting while traveling. You don't get any extra cool points because you're fasting while you're traveling. So Sahaba says some of us, we would travel with the Prophet ﷺ. Some of us would be fasting, some of us would not be fasting, and no one would find fault with the other. While today, when I approach Islam this way, if you don't do it, then I got issue with you. If you don't follow Islam the way I want to follow Islam, I got issue with everybody. Judgment, complete judgment. Aisha radiallahu ta'ala anha, she articulated the necessity of this process when she said, if the first injunction revealed from the Quran was to abandon intoxicants, people would have said, we will never abandon intoxicants. There would have been a reaction to that. If the first thing that Allah had revealed from the Quran had been leave off intoxicants, the people would have immediately reacted to that. We will never leave off intoxicants, right? And if the first verses revealed were to leave off fornication, the people would have said, we will never leave off fornication. This narration is in Sahih al-Bukhari. There would have been immediate reaction because human beings don't just change their behavior immediately. There's a process to that. And like when a person converts to Islam today, it's like we expect immediate results, right? Sister takes Shahada today, she has to be in full garb by tomorrow. And if she's not, we don't see her as a good Muslim. We don't see her as a practicing Muslim or Muslimah. And it's not fair because we're not even giving people an opportunity to change at their own pace based upon what they are comfortable with. You want me to move at your pace. And you are a seasoned Muslim. You've been Muslim for 10 years. And you want me to move like you are. And it took you 10 years to get there. And I just took Shahada yesterday. And you want me full garb. You want me to start growing my beard. Like I take my Shahada, I'm clean shaven. Take my Shahada tomorrow. I got to clean shave that morning. It's like, why you keep shaving your beard, brother? Let your beard grow. It's like, let my iman grow. Let my faith grow first. Nurture my faith. And everything else will fall in place at its own time. But we want immediate results. And if we don't get immediate results, then we just chalk you up as another, just another failure Muslim. You ain't going to never amount to nothing anyway because you're not moving as fast as I want you to move. And it's not fair, man. This is also paramount to the growth, development, and religious consistency of the new converts to Islam in our communities. By placing unrealistic expectations on them, we are forcing them to perceive short-term progression as the end goal. You understand? By making a person move faster than what they are ready to, we're making them believe that, the short-term progression is the end goal. Growing your beard, pulling your pants above your ankles, like that's the end goal. That's not the end goal. The end goal is to stay Muslim despite the changes that are going on around you. That's the end goal, is to remain firm in your belief in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala despite the changing world that you live in, despite the calamities that you are going to be confronted with because of your decision. That's the end goal. Allah said, وَاعْبُدَ رَبَّكَ حَتَّى يَأْتِيَكَ الْيَقِينُ. Worship your Lord until death comes to you. That's the end goal. It's to die as a believer. Everything in our religion is designed, the easiness in the religion, the practicality of the religion, the methods that the Prophet used to implement the religion. The Sahaba, they said that we used to memorize 10 ayats from the Quran. And then we would learn what they meant. We would begin acting upon them before we would move on to the next 10. It was through that method that Abdullah ibn Umar memorized Surah Al-Baqarah in 11 years. Took him 11 years to memorize Surah Al-Baqarah. We got kids that memorize Surah Al-Baqarah in months. But look at the method. That method is just complete regurgitation and memorization, whereas that method is digestion, reflection, implementation. You understand what I'm saying? Totally different method. And that's why they got the results that they got, and we're getting the results that we get. We're not taking from the blueprint, man. We've created our own blueprint. And then we say we're practicing, we pride ourselves on being practicing Muslims. Like, based upon what? I'm just stating facts here. I'm not, judging anybody. I'm just stating it how it is, man. I went through this process, and I'm sure those who are new converts now, I'm sure that the process is even worse now. At least when I converted to Islam, the people who were like seasoned Muslims were older people. The people who are seasoned Muslims today is 24, 25-year-olds who have very limited life experiences. Their worldview is like this. Have never even been on a plane before. Have never even been to another country before to see how other people live, how other people practice Islam. And they're in the masjid trying to teach you how you should practice Islam. I'm sorry. It doesn't work like that. It doesn't work like that. And even worse than that, you have our leaders now, imams, preachers, and teachers, we're talking about in their early 20s, while you 50, 60 years old, gray haired, and been around the world and, and back, and you got this 24, 27-year-old trying to teach you how to implement Islam in your life. That's a problem. That's a problem. Anyway, by placing unrealistic expectations on new converts, we are forcing them to perceive short-term progression as the end goal, which is most of the time external and superficial. The short-term progression is really very superficial. As I talked about in the khutbah, the beard, the pants above the ankles. And it's like, once you've done that, you've arrived. It's like, and that's just so short-term, and it's just very surface, very superficial. There's no like internal growth and development in terms of your faith in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, your tawakkul, your reliance on Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. We're talking about just short-term progression that's just very superficial, man. You drink with your right hand. And I'm not saying that these things are not important, but they have a place. They have a place of importance. Everything is not on the same level of importance, right? So then the person grabs a clip of this video. Oh, Shadeed Muhammad belittles putting, your pants above your ankles or whatever. Come on, man. Nobody's belittling that. Where's my pants at right now? Nobody's belittling that. What I'm saying right now is that everything has its level of importance. You're going to tell me that growing your beard, drinking with your right hand, and pulling your pants up above your ankles is of the same level of importance as building your iman, building your faith in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, trusting in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, praying 5 times a day. Is that on the same level of importance as that? La wallahi. You don't have any narrations of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. The first things he was telling his companions was to pull their pants above their ankles. Not to mention that the reason why pulling the pants above the ankles was, even a thing for the Prophet ﷺ, because that was more of their cultural practices. For a person to drag their thobe on the ground, right, was seen as a sign of, bravado, this male bravado and this arrogance. And the Prophet ﷺ was against anything arrogant. You understand? While today, we don't even know why we pulling our pants above our ankles. First of all, it's not even from our culture to drag our pants on the ground out of arrogance. That's not our culture. That's just how we dress. Just come along with the territory of being an American. That's just part of our culture. And then here we go, going hard. We define a person's whole practice of Islam, whether or not he got his pants above his ankle. Wallah al-azim, I'm a victim of that. And I'm a proponent of that because there was a time in my life when I met a Muslim, the first thing I would do was look down and see where his pants was. Before even looking him in his face and giving him the greeting of salam, first thing I do was look down. My eyes go down to see where his pants lay, the length of his pants, and then I would come back up and that would determine how my salam would be. Whether it would be warm salam because I felt like you were practicing Islam according to my standards, or it would be a very cold salam because I felt like you weren't practicing Islam according to my interpretation of Islam. You understand? That's sick, man. That is a sick mentality, man. Sick, man. And so I was once a proponent of that, and now I'm a victim of that. Because some people see me and like, oh, his pants not above his ankles. I had a guy, I took a picture in City Hall in Philadelphia with, who's the mayor now. He wasn't the mayor then. He was a councilman then, and I did the invocation in City Hall at that time, and I took a picture, and I had on some, dress slacks or whatever. I'm not going to City Hall, my pants yanked up. Like, come on, man. Like, we're representing Islam, all right? In our local communities where that's understood and it's acceptable, that's different. Your politics, this is a different level. Anyway, I take a picture with the mayor, and then someone takes that picture, posts it on social media, and then circles my pants leg, and then draws an arrow to it. Look at his pants legs, not above. It's like, you got to be kidding me, man. You have got to be kidding me, man.
Wow.
Anyway, so we place emphasis on the intricacies of Islamic attire, jargon, and external obedience. External obedience. What do I mean by that? Not necessarily the way I said attire. We place emphasis on the intricacies of Islamic attire, jargon, and external obedience.
The external is that which is opposite.
External obedience, how you look on the outside, right? Not necessarily in terms of dress, but, how you look obedient when you're around the brothers, right? You see the sisters coming, lower your gaze, brother, lower your gaze. It's like, dude, the first look is for you. That's natural. That's natural, because the thing about it is that when you're in your workplace and your other places, you looking. Then when you're around the brothers, he's like, lower your gaze. Stuck for the law, lower your gaze. It's like, what do you want me to walk like this? Am I going to walk in the street like this, just looking down at the ground? Is that what is expected of me as a Muslim? Come on, man, be realistic. Be realistic. I mean, we're not even using any aql, any intellect with this, man. We just, lower your gaze, Aki. It's like, and then when you do that, you take away from the person's just natural propensity to just be who they are. So now you become pretentious. Now everything is predicated on being judged or being looked at a certain way. So now you begin this culture of acting like we're obedient to Allah when we're in a public setting. And these same individuals who are externally obedient to Allah, when you catch them by themselves, when you catch them on the internet, if you was to take a scroll through their history on their browser, you'll see a different story of obedience, right? I mean, come on, man. So we place emphasis on the intricacies of Islamic attire, jargon, and external obedience while giving very little to no attention to the condition of one's heart and the dictates of Islamic manners, adab. Unfortunately, many who convert to Islam today find themselves intimately connected to every aspect of the religion very brusquely, but after some time they lose interest. So we see people coming to Islam, they're connected to everything. Fasting Mondays and Thursdays, reading the Quran, memorizing the Quran, sitting in Arabic class, learning this, learning that, connected to this, going to the masjid. They're connected, on so many different levels. And then at some point, they lose interest in these things. Sisters who zealously adorn themselves with the niqab and the abaya at the onset of their conversion now dress completely alluring and enticing without shame. Can anybody in here attest to that? Anybody in here attest to the fact that we've seen sisters that come into Islam, they immediately put on all black, put on niqab, gloves, all that good stuff, right? And then at some point, they don't even cover at all. At all. As a matter of fact, they become the antithesis to what they used to be. The total opposite of what they used to be. They wear alluring clothes and enticing clothes, post their pictures on the internet, spandex, and just very alluring. Like, how do you go from that to that? I mean, we have to ask ourselves, what are we doing wrong? Because there's nothing wrong with her. It's something that she experienced in our communities that made her go from that to that. And we'll sit back and we'll blame the sister. We'll say, astaghfirullah. Think of the sister she used to cover. But then you got to ask yourself, what experiences did she have in the Islamic community that made her go from one extreme to the other? What happened? And we'll never take the blame for that because we're perfect. It's obviously her fault. No, The thing about it is, which is the next chapter, actually, and that is setting standards for people that are realistic. We set a bar that is so high that people can only reach it, but there's no consistency with it. And then when they fall because they can't maintain that bar, right, then we blame them for it. It's like almost like our communities are setting people up to fail because the standards are so unrealistic. And then the question would be, okay, if we're setting unrealistic standards for other people, then how do we manage to maintain these standards? We don't. We are just as inconsistent as anybody else. We're hypocritical, without a doubt. We look like we're maintaining the bar. When a new convert comes into Islam and sees the Muslim community from the outside, it looks like they're maintaining the bar. But the longer and longer you are in the community, you begin to see through all of that. Like, yo, this is a big joke. It's a farce. It's a big joke. And that's what makes people say, well, you know what? Ain't no need in me going that hard because I see this person one day they like this, the next day they like that. And here I go trying to go hard, to prove everybody that I'm a good Muslim. And you end up burning yourself out until you just you come to the realization that it's all a joke. It's all a joke. And I know there are many Muslims that are probably listening right now, many Muslims who will listen to this and say, you know what, the boy, spot on. Spot on. I felt like that, So many brothers and sisters, many brothers were vigilant about, making all 5 compulsory prayers in the masjid at the onset of their conversion. Now don't even pray at all. You remember that time when you convert to Islam and you're at the masjid for every salat? I remember it was a time when I was at the masjid literally for all 5 prayers. I saw that mandatory. I had to be at the masjid for all 5 salat. I don't care where I was and what I was doing. And some of the people who you used to pray alongside with, today they don't even pray at all. At all. There's no doubt that this is the result of falling into progress intermittently. The result of failing to progress intermittently, which allows people or allows them to cultivate their faith and their character carefully with longevity as the goal. We don't allow people to convert to Islam and carefully, plan their lives as a Muslim at their own pace, which would give them the longevity that they're looking for. Longevity is the end goal, not some temporary progress. I grew my beard today. MashaAllah, you grew your beard. MashaAllah, your beard looks nice. But as if that's the end goal. That's just a byproduct of living a life of a Muslim. That comes along with the territory. But that's not the end goal. Oh, he's wearing thobes now. He don't wear pants no more. Right? I remember there was a time when I didn't own a pair of jeans. Everything I wore was a white thobe with the little flimsy white pants that you wear underneath. It could be winter outside. My wife used to laugh at me. Like, dude, you can buy a pair of jeans. It's okay. I'm like, no, because jeans is haram. That's for the kuffar. Just going mad hard. And my wife used to laugh at me because she was born and raised Muslim. And she's like, dude, you doing the most, man. You ain't got to do it like that, man. Go get you a pair of jeans, man. It's freezing outside. You got only little skimpy white pants underneath your throat. I kid you not, man. Extreme? I can show you extreme, man. You want to talk about levels of extremity, man? Listen, I was doing the most, man. Yeah. And I didn't start off like that. There were thoughts and beliefs that were put into my head to make me believe that I had to be like that. And I didn't know enough about Islam to protect myself and to defend myself at that moment. So you just acquiesce. You just acquiesce. You just say, okay, well, he's Muslim. He must know what he's talking about. Let me just, And some people might say, well, you're stupid for doing that or whatever. And I'm like, until you walk the mile in my shoes, you can't understand you can't understand my story. You can't open my book at page 200 and it got 400 pages in it and understand, what you're dealing with. You got to start from the introduction, baby. It doesn't work like that. You know what I mean? Like, you can't judge a book that has 400 pages and start at 200 and say this book is stupid. It doesn't make sense. Obviously, to you, if you go back to the introduction and then the prelude and the author's introduction and, table of contents and work your way through, the book makes sense to you. And everybody has their own book. But, I was very extreme, man. Very extreme. And it wasn't until I sat down and I actually began to write this book that I realized, like, how much hell I gave my family under the guise of trying to be a good Muslim. And it's sad, man. It's sad. Because I didn't learn intermittent progress. I learned instantaneous progress. I had to progress right then and there on the spot. And not progress over time and learn at my own pace and make mistakes and things like that. I didn't have that process, And the only thing that we can do from that, or the only thing that I can do at this point, is to understand that and then allow my children to have that process. So now my children are enjoying that process. And alhamdulillah, that at the age that they're at now, I'm not who I was 20 years ago. You know what I'm saying? I'm not who I was 15 years ago, because I would have been doing to my children what many second-generation children, parents did to them, chasing them away from Islam. To someone who is rigid and extreme, you might look at me and say, well, you're a little loose, a little lax with your children. But guess what? My children love Islam. Mm-hmm. My children love Islam. Alhamdulillah, I don't make it, distasteful for them. And they see that there's ease. They see that there's compassion. There's room for growth. There's room, to progress, right? So, the Prophet ﷺ warned us about this when he said, indeed, this religion is easy. No one goes to the extreme in the religion except he will be overtaken by it. Allah states in the Quran, Allah is the one who created the heavens and the earth in 6 days, and then he rose above the throne. However, Allah, the Almighty and Majestic, did not need 6 days to create the heavens and the earth. You ever think about that? Allah says that he created the heavens and the earth in 6 days. ثُمَّ اسْتَوَىٰ عَلَى الْعَرْشِ, and then he rose above his throne. But Allah is the same one who created Adam with kun fayakun, just be, one word. So, does Allah actually did he need 6 days to create the heavens and the earth? Or was there some wisdom behind him taking 6 days to create the heavens and the earth? Absolutely. All right. Allah could have created the heavens and the earth and all that is in between them and that which is greater than them with one word, be, and it is. Allah states in the Quran, indeed the command of Allah, إِنَّمَا أَمْرُهُ إِذَا أَرَادَ شَيْئًا أَن يَقُولَ لَهُ كُن فَيَكُن. That the command of Allah, when he wants something, is to simply say to it, be, and it is. All right? That's proof that Allah could have created the heavens and the earth with one word. He said that indeed the command of Allah is such that when he wants something, he simply says to it, be, and it is. However, the scholars of tafsir mention that Allah created the heavens and the earth in 6 days to teach his creation that matters of great importance take time. That's the wisdom. Matters of great importance. If something is important to you, it takes time. No, let him sleep. Alhamdulillah. He's getting the barakah. He's getting the rahmah.
Yeah, he's with the angels, right?
MashaAllah.
Go ahead and get him, bro.
All right. So, thus the idea of becoming a good Muslim or a practicing Muslim is no different. It takes time. It takes time. All right. One of the great scholars of Islam, Muhammad ibn Munkadir, he said, I struggle with my soul to align itself with the expectations of Allah for 40 years until it finally conformed. I struggle with my soul to align my soul with the commandments of Allah, and it took me 40 years. We want change tomorrow. Tomorrow. You accepted Islam today? you need to be a practicing, obedient, Muslim by tomorrow, right? It doesn't matter. It doesn't work like that. Brothers, let me share something. Let me share something with you. Some brothers marry women who they know are not as religious as they would want them to be. That's mistake number one, because you should marry someone who is going to complement your level, right? Don't make the mistake that I made and say, well, I'm Shadid Muhammad. Anybody who marry me is going to practice Islam like I do, right? You're sadly mistaken, because people don't change. Your perception of people change, but people don't change. They are who they are, right? See, I had this notion in my mind that if I marry someone because I'm Shadid Muhammad, right, I'm going to make her change. I'm going to make her just like me, right? So now it's like my home now becomes a factory. I'm producing replicas of Shadid Muhammad until you fail at that process a few times, and then you realize that you ain't the Shadid. You ain't nothing. You're not who you thought you was, right? Because there's some women out there that will challenge you on that, man. You like, well, I'm standing, this is the way I practice Islam. You marry me, this is how you got to get down. And every woman is going to agree from the beginning, okay, inshallah, I'm going to pray 5 times a day. Inshallah, I'm going to, be obedient to Allah. And then when you marry them, it's like the human side of them comes out. And then you realize, like, she's not conforming. One or two. And it's just like, all right, toss her away and go get someone else. Like, this is not the way it works, man. That's not reality. So if you want to marry someone, you should start off looking for someone that is going to complement where you believe you are. Because we're not exactly where we think we are. That's a perception. We think we're here. We think we are Prophet Muhammad walking right behind him, when the reality of the matter is that you might be, somebody else, So stop deluding yourself into thinking that because you are where you are Islamically, that anybody you marry is just automatically going to get on the same program. It doesn't work like that. You know what I mean? It doesn't work like that. People are who they are, and, you might meet somebody who's going to challenge you, right? Allah says, وَجَعَلْنَا بَعْضُكُمْ لِبَعْضٍ فِتْنَةً أَتَصْبِرُونَ. We've made some of you a trial for others. Won't you be patient? So you might meet that someone who's going to test you. Everything you want them to do and be, they are the total opposite. Especially when a woman knows that that's who you're trying to make her become. She becomes resistant. She becomes obstinate purposely, because she's saying to herself, you're not going to make me be like you. I'm not you. So now you run into another problem. All right? So he said that I tried to align my soul I struggled to align my soul with the expectations of Allah for 40 years until it finally conformed. All right. Sufyan al-Thawri, he said, I never treated a problem more difficult for me than my own desires. Sometimes it works for me. Sometimes it works against me. That's just life. Sometimes I get the better of my desires, and sometimes my desires get the better of me. That's just life. That's how it goes. All right. Unrealistic expectations were also placed on the prophets and messengers, including Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and in a vain attempt to discredit their divine status amongst the masses. All right? So, we're talking about the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam being down to earth. I'm going to read one more page and then I'll stop, because there's something very important I want to get to. We're not going to be able to complete the whole chapter, but you kind of get the gist of where this chapter is going. So rather than just go in giving example after example after example of Prophet being down to earth, I got to break the whole thing down for you. You know what I mean? I got to dissect everything, all right, and break it down so that we build a foundation, and then we build all of the examples of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam on top of it. A lot of Islamic books, especially those that come from Saudi Arabia and other places, a lot of times the subject matter is just scratching the surface. which is why we're not going to get as far as we could be as a people, as African American Muslims or American Muslims, period, until we start to create our own, scholarship here in America. If we're completely relying on a Saudi paradigm of practicing Islam in America, which sounds oxymoronic, to begin with, how are we American Muslims practicing Islam from a Saudi Arabian paradigm? We have scholars from Saudi Arabia that are writing books on material that we are accepting, trying to implement in a culture like American culture. It's not working for us. And the moment we realize that, then we start to take the information from the scholars overseas and then we reinterpret it in a language and in a method that appeals to our culture. Understand? We're not saying do away with the scholars. We're saying do away with the paradigm that the scholars incorporate or infuse in their writing. If you live in Saudi Arabia, obviously your writing is going to be of a paradigm that is from where you live. Obviously, I wrote this book from my paradigm. Somebody from Saudi Arabia might not be able to understand the examples, the language that's being used, because it's given from a particular paradigm. You understand? So this whole idea, man, of, just completely relying on Saudi scholarship in order to help us practice Islam here in America, to me, is insane, because it hasn't worked. It hasn't worked. And it's not going to work until we stop relying on that and start to create scholarship. And we have scholarship right here. We have American Muslim scholars, African American, Caucasian American, convert to Islam. We have scholarship right here. We're just constantly relying on, information from Saudi Arabia to help us make sense out of the world that we live in. And I just find that strange. I find that insane that we still haven't figured that out. All right. So, unrealistic expectations were also placed on the prophets and messengers, including Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, in a vain attempt to discredit their divine status. So when a person tries to make you, person places unrealistic expectations on you, they know you're going to fail, right? Because it's unrealistic. They know you're going to fail meeting those expectations, so that way they get to discredit you. And we have to ask ourselves, is that what we're doing to one another in our communities? Are we placing unrealistic expectations on people, knowing that they're never going to be able to meet those expectations, so we can continue to discredit them to make ourselves look like we're on it, right? To look like we are doing the most. And we have to ask ourselves, is that what is happening? The Quraysh, they said, this is in Surah Al-Furqan, Surah number 25, ayat 7 and 8. The Quraysh said, what is with this one who claims to be a messenger that he eats food and walks in the marketplaces? Only if an angel was sent with him to enforce the warning, or a treasure given to him, or a garden for him to eat from. What are they saying here? I want you guys to break this down for me. And they say, meaning Quraysh, they say, مَا لِهَذَا الرَّسُولِ يَأْكُلُ طَعَامُ وَيَمْشِي فِي الْأَسْوَاقِ. What is with this one who claims to be a messenger, talking about Prophet Muhammad, that he eats food and he walks in the marketplaces? If only an angel had been sent down with him, meaning we would have believed in him. If an angel had been sent down with him to enforce his warning, or a treasure was given to him, or a garden for him to eat from, so he didn't have to eat from the food that we eat from. What are they basically saying?
How you gonna be a prophet when you come from us? Regular guy.
Right. Which means that what? If we had to simplify that, that means what? That if you are a prophet or a messenger, a person of God, you can't be down to earth.
You can't be like us.
You can't be a regular Joe. You got to do the most. You got to be exceptional. Right? This is unrealistic. The woman who gave the prophet poisoned food, which eventually took his life, when the prophet asked the woman, why did you poison me? What was her excuse? She said, I wanted to see if you were really a prophet. What do you mean by that? Because if you was really a prophet, then God would have protected you from being poisoned. It's like, oh my gosh, you killed me. You took my life on an unrealistic expectation. You understand?
And this is how a lot of people conceive us today.
Right. On an unrealistic expectation. So you're going to kill me just to see if I'm a real prophet or not. That if I was really a prophet, God would have protected me from the poison. And if I'm not a real prophet, then God is not going to protect me and I'm going to die from the poison and we're done with you altogether. This was her rationale. This was her logic. The same logic that we have of people today. If you're a good Muslim, then you're supposed to act like this. You're supposed to be like this, right? These expectations, these boxes that we put people in, right? And they did it to the Prophet ﷺ. So according to their understanding, these were not the characteristics of someone who, in their estimation, was fit to be a messenger of God. The irony of this is that they considered these characteristics to be evidence of his humanism. But had they done this, had Christians done the same thing with Jesus and his mother, maybe it would have protected them from idolizing him. That's the irony of this. Quraysh said that there was no way that the prophet could have been a prophet because he eats food, he walks in the marketplaces. No way he can be a prophet. And I'm saying the irony in this is that if Christians had done this with Jesus and his mother, they wouldn't end up worshiping them because it shows that they're human, right? It shows that they're human, right? Allah draws the attention to this point when he says that the Messiah, Jesus, the son of Mary, is nothing more than a messenger who many messengers have come before, and his mother was sincere. They both used to eat food. So Allah humanized Jesus and his mother, which means that if they were humans, then they're not deserving of worship. You see how that works? Yeah. They're not deserving of worship. SubhanAllah. They both but they both used to eat food. Look at how we clarify the signs to them, and then look how they fabricate lies against us. Notice how Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala highlighted that they both used to eat food. This signifies their need for human amenities and solidifies the truth that neither of them deserves to be worshipped instead of Allah. And the idealistic perception of Quraysh yesterday parallels the same attitude of those who view Islam through much of the media propaganda today. In addition, there are Muslims who adopt a very narrow view with respect to the scope of contemporary Islamic leadership that is mostly predicated on cultural interpretation. This not only complicates the role of Muslim leaders and their ability to be effective, but it also determines the degree of investment that those who hold such views would be willing to make, even if progress is tangible. Meaning, the same unrealistic view that they had of the Prophet ﷺ is the same unrealistic view that people have of Muslim leaders today. Right? And by having these unrealistic views of what a Muslim leader should look like, what a Muslim leader should be, or what he should involve himself in, a lot of that is predicated on cultural traditions, right? Obviously, if you come from a place like Pakistan where Muslim scholars and clerics, they don't get involved in politics at all, and then you come into America and you see a Muslim leader, engaging in the political, reform, political process, right, to whatever degree he's involved, whether it is speaking out against social injustice, whether it is trying to get laws changed within his municipality, to whatever degree, you might see him less than a leader because where you come from, Islamic leaders don't engage in political process. You see how that works? So we are basically judging Islamic leadership based upon our own cultural understandings, our cultural, traditions. And it's not fair. I'll elaborate a little further. I said one example of this would be how an imam should dress. I've been a proponent of this, and I've also been a victim of this. Many hold the opinion that an imam or student of knowledge should don the standard clerical garment, the thobe, at all times and in every place. Is there anyone here who either holds this view or held this view? That whenever you see an imam or student of knowledge, he should always have a thobe on. I held that belief. I held that belief, absolutely. I have never in all my years of being Muslim, I have never seen Abu Muslima with anything other than the thobe on, ever. And he obviously holds that opinion as well. I have never, ever in my entire life, and I used to live up the street from him, I have never in my entire life seen him in anything other than a white thobe or a thobe. Never. I've never seen him in sweatpants. I've never seen him in jeans. I've never seen him in shorts. I've never seen him in anything other than a white thobe. And all of the 20 years that I've known him. Now, I, on the other hand, different story. So, some hold the opinion that an imam or student of knowledge should don the standard clerical garment, the thobe, at all times and in all places. This view is held by many Muslims, including students of knowledge themselves, who've received formal training from Islamic universities abroad and have since lost touch with the cultural nuances of the environments from which they emerged. Totally my opinion. Those who hail from predominantly Muslim countries where the religious authorities are usually financially challenged observe the thobe as a standard dress code of Islamic clergy. This standard has now become the unrealistic expectation of the Muslim or religious authority here in the American diaspora, a standard from which they could never deviate. Why do I say that this is an unrealistic standard? That wearing a thobe for student of knowledge or imam at all times, why do I say that that's an unrealistic standard?
Because he has to work.
Amongst other things. Here in America, in most jobs, even if it's in corporate, there's still a corporate dress code, right? Which is casual corporate. That is slacks, dress shirt tucked in with a tie, right? That's corporate casual, and that's usually the standard. All right. For example, any local jobs, Walmart, there's a uniform that you have to wear. And even though, alhamdulillah, there are Muslim women that are allowed to keep on their overgarment. I've been to Walmart and I've seen Muslim women, alhamdulillah, who keep on their overgarment. Nonetheless, that's an obligation for them. However, wearing a thobe for a Muslim male is not an obligation from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. There's no ayah in the Quran that says that you have to wear that particular dress. All right, there is the general obligation of being modest, and the Prophet ﷺ has dictated and described to us what modesty for Muslim men looks like, right? Nonetheless, there's no standard dress that a Muslim has to actually wear. All right, so while some may say that you should wear a thobe all the time, situation here in America may dictate otherwise, right? So, many students of knowledge have to come back and they have to work. Unfortunately, they have to come back and they have to get a job. And I don't say unfortunately because I think it's a good thing, especially if these students of knowledge left their parents' home, graduated from high school, and then immediately went overseas to study, and then come back and go right into an imam position and work at a masjid. It makes him socially awkward because he has had very little interaction with non-Muslims, which is his primary target audience. As a graduate from the university, your job is not necessarily to focus all of your attention on the Muslim community. Your job is to give da'wah, to perfect and enhance your ability to communicate and articulate with those who do not share your faith. Unfortunately, many students do the total opposite, because we're more comfortable being in the four walls of a masjid, talking to people who look like us, talk to people who will just kind of accept what we say and bring to the table and not challenge us, right? You have some students of knowledge and some imams who only rotate between 3 or 4 particular masajid, who the people are basically like sheep. They accept everything he says, ala ras wal ayn, no challenge, no nothing. All right, rather than going out to the larger community that we have here in America and challenge and engage people the way that the Prophet ﷺ instructed his companions to do. Nonetheless, when you take people who come from predominantly Islamic countries where the religious authorities are usually financially challenged, when you go to other countries, imams, students of knowledge, they live in very poor conditions. All right, even here in America, you'll be hard pressed to find imams that work outside of the masjid and that live in a home and that are pretty much doing financially well for themselves. It usually takes a while for a student of knowledge to get to that point, unless they automatically or already come from money. But most of the time, it's not like that. And they observe the thobe as the standard dress of Islamic clergy. This standard dress has now become the unrealistic expectation of the religious authority here in the American diaspora, a standard from which they can never deviate. There have been many great debates about this matter. However, what I'm presenting here is the privilege that many have of putting the imam or student of knowledge in the box of expectation while they make their own standards. You say an imam or student of knowledge should look like this, but you get to wear whatever you want to wear. You get to go wherever you want to go. You get to do whatever you want to do. You make yours up as you go along. But the imam, student of knowledge, has to stay in this little box that you put him in right here. You follow me? And it's unfair. Why do I have to be in your box of expectation while you just kind of make it up as you go along? Right? Same thing Quraysh did to the Prophet ﷺ. How is he a prophet in the message? He eats food and walks in the marketplace. It's like, but don't you eat food and walk in the marketplace? What makes you any different than I? If I go to the gym and go work out, do I get to go to the gym and work out? You go to the gym and work out, don't you? So I'm not allowed, because I'm an imam or student, stuck with the law. What you doing in here, brother imam? It's like, what do you mean? What am I? I'm working out. What are you doing? What are you doing? It's like, I don't get to do that, though. Because my job, in your eyes, consists of going to the masjid and going home. That's my life in your eyes. I don't get to have a regular life. I don't get to do normal things that everybody else does. Because that's the box that you put me in. And there have been many great debates about this matter. However, what I'm presenting here is the privilege that many have of putting an imam or student of knowledge in the box of expectation while they make their own standards. Islam references the social customs of the people called urf, al-urf, of the people as the standard. There's an axiom, what they call al-usul, al-asl, from the usul, al-fiqh. An axiom that says that the urf, that the customs of the people take precedence. Unless there's a text that specifically says that this is haram, other than that, the customs of the people are the norm. You understand? This is from the field of usul al-fiqh. Islamic scholars have even considered opposing the social norms and customs of one's environment with respect to clothing, so as long as it doesn't conflict with Islamic regulations, as being extremely foolish. One of the great scholars of Islam, I believe it was Malik ibn Dinar, he said, مُخَالَفَةُ الْعُرْفِ فِي اللِّبَاسِ حَمَاقَةٌ. To go against the customs of the people in terms of dress is foolishness. So while your entire community is wearing this or dressing like this, you adopt somebody else's dress and expect that to be the norm or to be accepted amongst the people. This is foolishness. None of the Sahaba changed their dress wherever they were from, whether they were from Yemen, whether they were from Habasha, from Abyssinia, wherever they were from, and they embraced Islam. The Prophet never emphasized that they changed their dress to dress like they dressed in Arabia. Never. Whereas the expectation now for someone who converts to Islam is that the moment he converts, you got to take those kafir clothes. That's what we call kafir clothes. I don't even know what that term means. That means that these are the clothes that are usually identified with people who disbelieve in Allah. You got to be kidding me. So everyone who disbelieves in Allah wears jeans? This is the clothes of the kuffar. These are terms that are used, which have become jargon. Jargon, you know what jargon is? Jargon is the language that people use within a particular sect or group or cult or clique. They have their own language. And that's what we've done. We've created our own jargon. Of course, and language and culture go hand in hand. So wherever you have language, You have a culture around that language. So this is the jargon that we've created. Those are the clothes of the kuffar. Those are kafir clothes. Let me go take my kafir clothes off. Not to mention belittling and demeaning. To make a person feel shameful for wearing anything other than a thobe. This is the culture that we've created. So now you have brothers who feel uncomfortable walking into a masjid and they don't have a thobe on. So much so that brothers will put in their car what they consider izar, and they'll wrap a sheet around them to come in and pray. Because of not necessarily covering their aura, because the aura could be covered even with the jeans on, but to escape judgment and to escape shame. Well, at least I had my izar on so nobody can't really say nothing to me. Or at the entrance of the masjid door, we'll begin cuffing our pants up. Right? If they're normally worn down, we'll cuff them up so when we enter into the masjid, the pants is cuffed up. Because the fact of the matter is that it doesn't matter whether you pray with them cuffed and then you uncuff them afterwards. The fact of the matter is that they're uncuffed. They're at your ankles. It is what it is. But this is a culture of shame that we've created in our masajid, in our communities. Do you guys follow me? What does that do to a person? Eventually, they can't keep up the facade. They can't just keep, when I go into the masjid, let me change real quick so that eventually they give up trying to please everybody and just say, to hell with it. This is just who I am. Take it or leave it. And then they have one or two altercations with someone who approaches them in a way where they are uncomfortable. And they just say, you know what, I'm not going back to the masjid no more. Because every time I go in there, I'm confronted by somebody who wants to superimpose on me their idea of who I should be. You don't get to do that. You don't get to superimpose on me who you think I should be. You don't know where I've come from, how far I've come to get to this point. I might have just escaped a life sentence. I might have just murdered somebody. And I come into a masjid and you superimposing on me. Like, what? Raise what? It's like, dude, I'm on trial for murder. You telling me like, that's the last thing I need to hear right now. You know what I'm saying? Like, I've made so many strides. Perhaps Allah will overlook that. That's the least of my worries right now. Allah will overlook that considering where I came from. And some of us have come from some horrible, horrible situations, man, to find Islam and only to have someone basically tell you, you're still not good enough. You're still not good enough. And it's not fair. It's not fair. You know, the Prophet ﷺ didn't do that to people. Guy came to him and said, "Oh, Messenger of Allah, what if I pray my 5 prayers? I don't do anything extra. I fast the month of Ramadan. I don't do nothing extra. I pay my zakat, 2.5 once a year. I don't pay nothing else. And I make Hajj 1 time. That's it. I don't do nothing else. Will I go to Jannah?" The Prophet ﷺ's response, what did he respond with? He said, "Qad aflaha in sadaq." If he is truthful in what he's saying, he'll be successful. He didn't say, no, you got to make your sunnah prayer, the 2 rak'ah before Salatul Fajr. Those are like wajib. That's sunnah mu'akkida. The Prophet never left that off. You got to do that. And you got to fast Mondays and Thursdays because these are the doors of the gates of Jannah open. He didn't do all of that. He met the person where he was. Kull insanu tabibu nafsi. Every individual is his own doctor. You know what your problems are, and you know what your remedy is. Who am I to superimpose on you who I think you should be? If this is what you found easy for you to do in the religion, I'm just going to encourage you to continue on in that. The scholars, they say, "Man burika lahu fi shay'in falyalzimhu." Whoever finds a particular deed easy for them to do, then let them stick with that. That's easy for you. You know, and we have to be considerate of this. 13 verses later in the same surah, and I'll end with this, Allah clarified that what they considered abnormal was in fact the modus operandi of all prophets and messengers, meaning the method. And Allah says, "And we did not send messengers before you, O Muhammad." This is the confirmation that the prophet was waiting on, right? They judged him. They say, how can he be a prophet? He eats food, walks in the marketplace. If only Allah has sent an angel down with him to reinforce his message, or sent with him a treasure, or given him a garden to eat from. 13 verses later, Allah gives the Prophet the validation he needed. He said, we did not send messengers before you, O Muhammad, except that they ate food and they walked in the marketplaces. You're normal. You're normal. Right? You are normal. Nothing abnormal about you. You're normal. That's the validation that he was looking for. And so by virtue of the fact that all prophets and messengers were human beings, it leaves little room for anyone to believe that they are above emulation. Meaning, if all of the prophets and messengers ate food, walked in the marketplaces, meaning they were normal, it leaves no room for anyone to say, well, though that was the prophet and messenger, I'm not a prophet. They were human beings just like you were. So by validating the point or solidifying the point that the prophet was down to earth, that means that anybody could live up to his standard. It's doable. Nobody can say, well, I'm not the prophet. No, that excuse is not going to fly. Because the Prophet ﷺ was very down to earth, was very simple. Allah confirmed it. So by virtue of the fact that all prophets and messengers were human beings, it leaves little room for anyone to believe that they are above emulation, that you cannot emulate the prophets and messengers. All right? As it is very common for Muslims as well as Christians, when their prophet is referenced to deflect by saying, well, I'm not Muhammad, or I'm not Jesus. You check a Christian, you say, did Jesus do that? Well, I'm not Jesus. That's not an excuse. It's flimsy. Because the fact of the matter is that these prophets and messengers were human beings. They were down to earth, and they were put here as models, as examples. So, I mean, that's just, some of what that chapter entails. And there's some other examples that I, mentioned to show that the Prophet ﷺ was down to earth. So basically, I just gave you the platform. The pages after that, leading up to the end of the chapter, are basically example after example after example after example of the Prophet ﷺ himself being down to earth. Things that he did with his companions that, normal people, didn't see him doing, right? So that was that. I don't know if anyone had any questions or comments about what was presented. I end each chapter with a quote. I'm very big on quotes. I end the chapter with a quote. It said, the reason why rivers and seas are able to be lords over 100 mountain streams is that they know how to keep below them. That is why they are able to reign over all of the mountain streams. Therefore, the wise man, wishing to be above people, must by his words put himself below them. Wishing to be before people, he must put himself behind them. In this way, though he has his place above them, the people do not feel his weight. Though he has his place before them, they do not feel it as an injury. Therefore, all mankind delight to exalt him and weary of him not. Meaning people want to raise you up and give you the place, but they don't feel the weight of you being above them. This is what it means to be down to earth. This is what it means to be humble. And this is what the Prophet ﷺ was. You didn't feel the weight of his authority when you were around him. And we have to check ourselves with that, especially as men, because it's like when we come into an environment, come into a circle, come into our homes, we want everybody to feel the weight of our authority. I am the man here, right? It's like poor students of knowledge who graduate and come home. They got to come home and pay homage to, this, old head student of knowledge that's been around preaching for 20 years. You preaching the same message. So this poor, mesquite student of knowledge who graduate got to come and kiss your feet and pay homage to you before you give him a platform of his own in order. And you never give him the platform because we never want to release the microphone. We want to hold the mic, right? They got to pry it from our hands at our janazah. Right? No, I kid you not, man. Many, many fights that have broken out between students of knowledge, imams, has been because of this very thing right here. I got to pay homage to you, right, in order for me to have some type of recognition. And it's just like, the thing about it is that if you want somebody to pay homage to you, that's a problem. The legacy that you've left behind, the service that you have offered the community should automatically demand homage. People give you that on GP because of the work that you put in. Not that you're going to stay in my shadow until I feel like you've given me the... Yeah, because we want to thank our elder, our brother, our student. Man, go sit down with that crap, man. You got to be kidding me, man. You serious? I got to lick your boots in front of the whole entire community in order to get some type of recognition, in order to create... Man, you got to be kidding me, man. Where? Where is that from our religion? Please tell me. So this is what I wanted to present in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Like I said, if I quote an ayat or hadith in the book, then that's an ayat or hadith. If I don't quote an ayat or hadith, then it's just my perception. It's just my outlook, my perspective. It doesn't necessarily have to be anyone else's reality.
Hello, Johnny.
Hey, how you doing?
Come see my dad this year. Can I see my dad this year?
Take your shoes off. Get your shoes off. They off.
You got it.
All right.
Any questions about the chapter? If any of you were listening, if you have any questions or comments about what was presented. So that's, he came to perfect moral character. And as you can see, reading through it line by line, I just really want people to just take the time out to just kind of reflect on it. Reflect on the information rather than just read the book and put it to the side. There's some really, really beautiful examples that I mentioned in the book of the Prophet ﷺ. And I think that with material like this, I think it just needs to be reflected upon and digested, and not just read and then tossed in the bookshelf with all of the other books that we've devoured. You know what I mean? Like, it's not that type of read. This is a more intimate read. You know, something that you walk around with, checking yourself, like a manual that you're checking yourself with. Now, anyone have any questions? I'll be in Philly on Sunday from 3 to 5 p.m. at Sister Amatullah's Treasures store on Lansdowne Ave. So if you're in the Philly area and you wanted to get the book, inshallah, that's Sunday from 3 to 5 p.m., inshallah. I'll be in Philly if you want to cop the book on Sunday, inshallah. You can go to my Instagram page as well as my Facebook page for the exact address of the store, inshallah. Any of you guys online had any questions? Wa fikum, jazakumullahu khairan. Any questions, Sheikh?
I can't wait to meet you. I'm excited anyway because I knowing where.
And there's a additional treat in there as well as my autobiography is in there as well. How I converted to Islam. Yes, you can order from my page through PayPal. The PayPal account is my email account, imamshadidmuhammad@gmail. So if you purchase the book through PayPal, just leave your address and it will be shipped to you, inshallah. Those who purchase the book, pre-ordered the book, their books should have come in the mail already today. Someone just emailed me or someone just messaged me earlier, said that they received their book today. So if you want to go to PayPal and purchase the book, you can go to my PayPal account, imamshadidmuhammad@gmail, and purchase the book through PayPal, and it will be mailed to you, inshallah. Okay. Yes, I wrote the book in 2009. I was in Riyadh. I was living in Riyadh when I wrote the book.
Oh, before you came home from school?
No. I came home in 2007. I stayed here for about a year and a half, and then I moved back to Saudi in 2008. And I stayed there for 2009. I stayed there for a year, and within that time that I was there, I wrote the book there. Yeah. I published it here, but I wrote it there.
Hey, listen, that you. No, you knew
Power pack or the
power
pack?
pack. What that for?
Both of them speak.
Gotcha.
It's emotional drive.
Gotcha.
But
So,
look, no, it's a powerful form.
All right, so we'll stop here, inshallah. No one has any questions. If you read the book and you have any questions, please email me, inshallah. I'll try to, respond, inshallah. Jazakumullahu khairan. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.